Hello, everybody, and welcome to webinar 6 of this series. And this webinar is called Measuring What Works. So, thank you so much for journeying with us along this series. We've had 6 amazing episodes, and we're rounding off this series with analytics. And I know that we've kind of touched on this, we've touched on audiences and a few different things, but this is really a deep dive into understanding your data, understanding that your data tells a story, and learning how to read that story, identify patterns, and then learn and grow from it. So let's dive straight on in. So I'm just going to touch on a few things that we've already been through, so feel free to skip ahead if you're already on top of these things. But it's really important as we go into this webinar that you understand the different types of metrics. So a metric is the reach, the number of views, the clicks, the profile visits, the reactions, and the comments, and then also the saves, shares, and watch time. So we've touched on these and how they are different and why we should value them differently. We've already talked about that in webinar 2, so I definitely recommend you would go back and watch that one. In that webinar, we specifically talk about audiences and understanding how to read whether or not a post has performed well based on that metric. So let's quickly talk these through. We've got reach and views. Some people call these vanity metrics. These tell you how many people saw the content. Now, high reach or high views does not mean a successful post. It means something. It means that your post was seen by a lot of people, but that does not necessarily mean it has been a successful post. Metrics number 2, interest metrics, clicks, profile visits, reactions, and comments. These show that someone paid enough attention to take action. So they made a comment, they went over to your profile to learn more, they liked it, it made them stop in their tracks and do something. And then the value metrics. These are the ones that I really look for: saves, shares, and watch times. So these tell us that the content had enough value for someone to keep it, come back to it, send it to someone because they would find value in it, or stay with it. Now, watch time is specifically for Reels, so take note of that, and we will move on, keeping all of those things in mind. Okay, so suggested ranges. When we're looking at the data that we've got in front of us, we will be looking at specific date ranges. So we might be looking at the last week or the last 90 days or the last 12 months. Now, when we're trying to identify patterns and see what's working, what's not, I wouldn't recommend going on a weekly basis. I'd say 30 days minimum and up. So 30 days is for recent trends, seeing what's worked in your last month as you maybe plan your next month. 90 days for identifying those kinds of patterns, and 12 months for campaigns and a big zoomed out snapshot. So I just want to reiterate that one post is not enough evidence to make a change in your social media strategy. A pattern is far more useful than a one-off result. Audience preference can show up in many, many different ways. Maybe that's that they specifically save certain things. Maybe it's that the likes are really high on event posts and not on promotional posts for fundraising or something like that. That doesn't mean that your audience doesn't like fundraising posts or won't respond to it. It just means that maybe they're responding in a different way. So let's head over to our Meta Business Suite. Now, this is a big, scary place and there's lots of elements, but I want to reassure you that once you figure out how to look at your data and how to read it, it will become far less scary. So you can see here, this is our homepage. You can see our recent comments. And as you can see, today we're going to be looking at the CMAA, Instagram, and Facebook. Now, I do want to reiterate that our audience is probably very different to your audience. I know that I'm speaking to a lot of radio stations and media outlets and churches and Christian organizations, maybe charities. So you are speaking to the everyday Christian, the everyday household. You are asking people to engage with your mission and your ministry and hear more about what you're doing. Whereas our audience is you. We're mostly staff members of our members and organizations, people working in the media arts industry, the music industry, and it's quite international compared to other what I'm imagining your audiences are too, because we have a lot of interaction with Americans and people who have been on tour and that kind of thing. So our audience and our metrics are very different to what yours might be. So I encourage you to bring up your Meta Business Suite. I'll give you a minute to do it now, and follow along. So I'm going to talk you through it, but if you can have this open on another page or tab and you can kind of follow along on your end, that will be helpful for you, I'm sure. And so we're going to get started. You're going to have to go back in after this and do a far more deeper dive. I'm just going into the surface level stuff right now, and I'm going to give you the tools that you need to do that deep dive later. So what we're going to go and do is over to the left hand side, we're going to go to the Insights panel. So you'll see that over here, Insights, and this brings us to what we call the overview page. Now this tells us in the last 30 days what has been happening. Now this is a very broad snapshot. It's across Instagram and Facebook and stories, and it's a bit of too much of a zoomed out thing, but it can be useful. But it does tell us our overall metrics here. So we've got views, interactions, visits, and follows. So let's click into views right now. So we'll go into views. Now you can see that it's given us this graph here, and you can see these spikes, and that represents this 3.4 thousand views. Now you can see that it's listed our top content for the last 30 days by views. So we'll come back and look at that in a moment, but what I actually want to filter is up here. Now I know I've touched on the importance of doing this in our last webinar where we talked about this, but we at CMAA mostly focus on Instagram as our main source of content. So what I'm going to do is look at the Instagram side of things, because that is where we're putting our energy. Now you'll see that reflected in our stats, because we have 20,000 views on Instagram. And again, views aren't everything, but that's a much higher statistic than we had on Facebook. And we have all upward trending on here as well. And I am actually going to look at the last year for this zoomed out snapshot where we are looking at patterns. So first I'm going to look at this year, and then based on views, you can see that it's bringing up all of this content, and you can see all of the spikes. We've had a big spike here, but we have a pretty consistent view panel here. And then we will head over into reach. Now you can see that our reach is a lot lower, and the graph is vastly different. There's lots more lows and highs. The peaks and the spikes are really trackable to which content you posted that day. On Sunday, April 12th this year, we've had a huge spike. So we've zoomed out now, and now I'm going to zoom back in to our 90-day summary. Okay, here we go. So we've got the last 90 days, and we have 34,000 views over the last 90 days on Instagram. And that means now we can look at these top posts. So you can see by views, 4 out of 5 of the top posts are actually about Creative Awakening, which is an event that we are hosting over 2 weekends. Now, it's important to note that these posts are done as collaboration posts, so they have double the audience viewing them, and that is why the views are high. So we can see the views. We've got Creative Awakening, Reel. Then we've got a photo recap of the America tour from our community that's going on at the moment. That has quite a high number of views. And then going forward, we have more Creative Awakening and more America. So let's pivot now and look at all the same filters, but content interactions will be our filter. So now we can see our top content by interactions, and this has changed dramatically. We've still got Creative Awakening at the top again, because they are collaborative posts and they were successful, and it was about an event. And in the last 90 days, we've really really been focused on promoting this event. But if you can look past Creative Awakening at the top here, you can see that what has the most interactions are our community-based posts. So we've got people in our community here on the America Tour. We had a gathering of radio station leaders earlier in March. This is from a Christian music conference that we were a part of. And then we've also got more America Tour, again, Creative Awakening. And then this is a Good Friday post. And we tend to see a lot of our important days of the year, like Australia Day, Easter, Good Friday, things where people need something to share. We see those posts that we do perform generally pretty well. So it's not a surprise to me that those are in there. Now, let's look at reach now and see how that is different. So again, reach is how many people have put their eyes on this content. So Good Friday, again, performing well. Our Easter ones up the top, really high. And unsurprisingly, our top post for reach is a reel. Reels tend to really, really push high results for reach. So we can see here that this has high reach. It's our top performer for reach. It doesn't necessarily have super high. We've seen this in other high performing stats, but it doesn't necessarily have super high shares or anything like that in comparison. But we can see that it definitely has the highest reach. And again, this is not a surprise for Reels to be performing in that way. Okay, so now we can kind of see the overview of how we can analyze those posts. We need to dive in a little bit deeper. So we're going to head over here to the content tab. So you can see here our content is all lined up, and we can scroll over here to the right and we will be able to filter based on all of these things. Now we're not going to go into all of these today, but it is interesting. I encourage you to take a deep dive, look into these things, understand them. So today we're going to dive into looking at saves, shares, interactions, and views. So let's look up the top here. I want this to be filtered from just this year, so from January to now. Okay, so it's having a bit of a refresh. It may take a moment because it is grabbing all of the analytics. Now let's start over here with saves. Now typically a save to an audience member means I want to come back and look at this again. I've seen the value in this and I want to come back and revisit it. I want to understand it deeper and I want to revisit this content at a later date. And now this is something that we value highly. So let's see, once we filter the saves, we'll see what kind of posts are being saved the most. So, but to filter, we just click this little icon here. And now it's filtered from the most saves all the way down to the least saves. And it will just show the top few, and then we can dive a little bit deeper and go further into the list if we want to. So this will be unsurprising and probably across all of these different filters that Creative Awakening, specifically this carousel that we did, will be at the top of most of these. This had 14 saves and that's quite a high number for an event promotion. But again, this was a collaborative post. There were lots of eyes on it, so that isn't super surprising. But as we go through here, we can see this one, and to view the post, to get some clarity on what it is, you just click on it. It'll show you what it is. So this one's tensions every Christian creative has to hold. We do these kind of carousel posts to inspire, uplift, teach our creatives that are in our audience. So these sort of things always get a lot of saves and interactions. So that's our number 2 most saves. It's got 10 saves. Now we go down here, we've got more inspiring educational pieces. Our second one is Unlearning Hustle in Christian Creativity. So that's another one, the same category, inspiring, encouraging. Again, we've got inspiring, encouraging carousel, another inspiring, encouraging carousel. This one is what the Bible actually affirms about creative work. Another one, another creative carousel. And then we've got another creative awakening one here. That's a reel. It's got some good saves for reels. Reels don't typically have a lot of saves, so that's a really interesting figure. And then we've got Good Friday, another encouraging one. And then we've got another Good Friday post. And then this is actually a Bondi Memorial Day post that we did that got some good engagement. Okay, so now we can see here, unsurprisingly, that the encouraging Bible-based educational pieces to our creative audiences are something that has a lot of saves. So next, let's compare that to what has shares. So what we're going to do is we're simply going to come over to the shares folder here, click that same icon, and it will filter it with the top shares. So again, unsurprisingly, we've got Creative Awakening here at the top. Top two, actually, we've got Creative Awakening. This one, Sydney Creatives, this one's for you. That isn't actually Creative Awakening. This one is about an event that was happening that we shared with some artists that we were promoting with. And then we've got Creative Awakening again, Creative Awakening again, Good Friday. This one's the Bondi Memorial again. This one is a tour promotion. This one is promotion for our awards night. This one is about recognizing Australian Christian artists. So something that I'm noticing here, a pattern, is that the shares seem to be really, really event-based. We've got event, 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 and event. So that's a pattern that we have recognized. Previously, in the saves column, the pattern was that the encouraging pieces were getting a lot of saves, and in this one, the event pieces are getting a lot of saves. Okay, let's head over to interactions now. So interactions are the number of likes, reactions, saves, comments, shares, minus the number of deleted interactions. So if they have been deleted, they'll be removed from this number. Okay, so let's filter this. So again, we've got our Creative Awakening post right at the top here, but then we've got our USA tour coming in at number 2 above our other Creative Awakening pieces. So we've got our USA tour, that is a community piece. That's how I'd label it, community piece. Another community piece here, there's something special about being in a room. This is for a Christian music conference that we were a part of. And then again, we've got the Creative Awakening and then another community piece. We've got the gathering that happened in March, Creative Awakening again, another community piece, the tour in America. This is an encouraging piece, but then we've got community piece as well, the Australian musicians. So that's really interesting. So out of the top 10, what we're seeing here is a lot of community pieces. When people see themselves or see one of their friends in a post, it generally sparks a like or a share or some sort of interaction. Seeing yourself or a friend is something that people really look out for on social media, and that's something that usually does spark interaction. Now let's go over and see how that differs to views. Okay, so now again, we're just going to sort on the little filter button for views. Okay, again, Creative Awakening. We've got our USA tour photo high on views here. Our Christian music conference high on views here. And then we've got a reel, our first reel, not super high here on views, but again, that's only quite a new reel that was only posted yesterday, so that probably will still grow in terms of the views. And then we've got another community piece, the recognition of Australian artists, more events, more community. So this is actually this is another event. This is more community. This is encouraging. So there's a good range in views. There doesn't seem to be a single category where you can see that the views are really dominating in that category. So that's another thing to note. So now we've recognized a few patterns. We've looked really kind of surface level. We've looked at a few of these different patterns. I encourage you really dive in, dive deep, change it month to month, and have a deep dive. Spend an hour or so looking at these statistics and trying to understand your audience and what they prioritize and what they're engaging with. And to do that, you may need to dive a little deeper. So let's have a look at how you can do that. Okay, so we have 4 patterns here that we are going to look at. So we have pattern 1 is the topic of the post. Pattern 2 is the format of the post. Pattern 3 is the hook of the post. And pattern 4 is the action of the post. So let's go back to pattern 1 and we'll talk through these a little bit. Again, this will take time. It will take some energy to look into these statistics, but by doing so, even just once every maybe quarter, you'll really understand what your audience is prioritizing, what they're engaging with, and what they are valuing. So, topics. What subjects keep coming up in the top posts? So in that overview, what were the topics that kept on ranking really highly? What topics do the audiences engage most with? So do they really engage with Bible-based content? Do they really engage with content about your staff members? What is the content that they're engaging with? And what is it about? Are personal stories doing better than general updates? And then another question to ask about the topic, are event reminders doing better than event announcements? And so I've got some questions over here, and these are examples of topic patterns. So funding opportunities, behind the scenes content, artist stories, staff or community faces, practical tips, personal reflections, before and afters, that kind of thing. So you can ask yourselves these questions and then compare them to some of these examples and see where you're sitting in your social media with the topics. Let's move on now to the format. And so the format is the reel, the carousel, the format it's in. Maybe it's a story. So you can ask, are reels driving discovery or reach? Are carousels driving saves? Are single images getting comments? Are stories driving clicks? Are link posts underperforming? Are behind the scenes photos outperforming designed graphics? And these are just some examples of some questions, so you have a bit of framework to go by. And then again, here are some examples of format patterns. So usually carousels get saves, usually reels get reach, usually stories get link taps, and so on and so forth. So you will have a copy of these slides and you can take a screenshot if you like to use this as a tool when analyzing your data and going that little bit deeper into asking the questions about your audience. Okay, so now we've asked the questions about the format and what formats you're posting. Now let's talk about the hook. Now the hook is, surprise, surprise, what hooks your audience in. So it's at the start of the post, whether you've got a reel, a story, a carousel. In a reel, it's maybe the first about 3 to 5 seconds. In a carousel, it's the first image. In a story, it's what holds the visual hierarchy. So what opening lines worked, what first image worked, what first 3 seconds worked. Did the post start with a question? Did it start with a useful promise? Did it name the audience? And did it create curiosity? So identifying those patterns within your content can help you to understand what your audience is responding to. If you have gone with some questions and the questions are being outperformed by the promises, maybe you can really try to use more promises to see if that might be what your audience is responding to. So here are some examples of hook patterns that you might be able to utilize and use. Okay, now pattern 4, the action. So you can ask, was there only one call to action? Now this is really important, that it's really important to only have one call to action, because otherwise people don't know what they need to be responding to. Which posts made people click, book, register, and inquire, just like you asked? What was the benefit clear? Was the deadline clear? And did it assume people already knew why they should care? So sometimes telling people the problem or telling people why they should care is really, really necessary. It seems obvious to us because we're communicating it to them. We know why they should care, but sometimes they don't know. So be clear, have a clear call to action, and sometimes naming why they have a problem or why they should care about this is more important than you might think. And then again, these are some examples of some action patterns. So book now to get works better than book now. So book now to get early bird pricing. Book now to get a free X with your thing. Book now to bring a friend along. Book now. There's lots of different hooks that you can use and action patterns. Post with one clear action pretty much always outperform posts with multiple requests. So rather than saying, tag a friend who might also like this, head to the link in our bio to find out more and book your tickets on this website, just put the head to our website to find out more. And on your website, they'll be able to find out about the Bring a Friend deal, and they'll be able to find out about any sales and any information that they may need. Okay, so you've had a really deep dive into that data. You've identified some patterns. What now? How do you change your social media plan accordingly? What do you do? Do you just scrap the things that aren't performing? No, you don't do any of those. Once you spot a pattern, run a small test, keep the risk low, and keep the learning clear. I've developed a bit of a document and a resource for you to use in this instance, and I'm going to head over and quickly run you through this now. Again, you'll have access to this. Use it as a tool. So I have written out all of these examples of small tests that you can do once you've identified your patterns and gone deep into your data. So I've separated these into a few segments. So we've got small tests by content format. So that means when you're posting carousels, maybe you want to change up your captions. Maybe you want to change the way that you're doing reels and do a test in the reel space. Or maybe you just want to test if you're just posting single photos, single graphics, maybe there's a change that you could make in that. And same with stories. And then we've got tests by goal. If you want more reach, if you want more saves, if you want more shares, if you want more clicks, if you want more comments. And then we've got small tests by pattern notice. So we'll work our way back up and we'll look at some of the examples here. So if personal stories are doing well, maybe you can try doing more faces in your visuals. Or maybe you could try a story-led caption followed by a practical call to action. So maybe you post a reel with a personal story and you just check out and you just your caption in the past has been short and sharp. How inspiring was X and X's story? Instead of that, you could do a recap of the story and maybe a sidebar that wasn't mentioned in the video, quite a bit of a longer caption, and then a practical call to action. So find out more about X's story now by visiting our website. Okay, and then if reels are getting reach but not action. So a lot of people are seeing your reels, but no one's doing anything about it. Maybe you could do a story test, doing a story reminder after the reel and see if that has an impact. Maybe you could do a clearer connection between the video and the offer. So actually in the video, making sure there is a clearer connection between what the video is saying and what you actually want your audience to do. And then if your carousels are getting saves but they're getting low reach, maybe you need a stronger cover slide. Maybe you need to post a story that's teasing the carousel. So the story might say, carousel about Christian creativity coming tomorrow. Maybe you want to repurpose the carousel into separate, maybe not single posts, but you could do a single post, or you could do 2 smaller carousels. And then let's work our way back up now. This is if you want to do tests by a specific goal. So if you want to get more saves, maybe you could create a new theme of post. So maybe a common mistakes post, or a before you do this post, or create a post with practical definitions, or something that maybe people might want to refer back to later. Something that genuinely provides value. If you want more shares, you can create a post that helps someone explain something to others. You could create a post around some community pride or identity, or something that your audience will really connect with. And then scrolling up again, if you want to test something new with your reels, maybe you could start with a question rather than just diving straight into the video. Start with, this is a common mistake that I see. That's a good hook, like we talked about. And then if you want to work on your carousels, an example would be use more specific slide headings, and then you can compare your saves. So there's a lot of different options in this document. So I encourage you to identify your patterns and then read through this and find a small test that you can do. Okay, so to sum up, don't analyze one post in isolation. One post that does exceedingly well, that's excellent, but what does it mean? Why has it done exceedingly well? Or maybe you have a post that you put a lot of effort into and it's done miserably. And that can happen, and it's not the end of the world, and it doesn't mean you failed. You just need to look at the data, look at that type of post and what format it is in amongst a group of content to see why it's performed the way it has. Sort your content in different ways. If I had just looked at all of that content through the lens of just my saves, I would be pretty sad about all of the event posts and community posts. Or again, on the flip side, if I just looked at engagement, I'd think, oh, these encouraging Bible posts, no one cares about them, no one's really commenting, but they are getting a lot of saves. So again, you can't change your social media strategy or just turf anything based on one indicator. So look for repeated clues, as we just talked about: topic, format, hook, value, and action. So look at what's working, look at patterns and clues coming in over and over again, and use that data to understand your audience. And then turn one clue or pattern into a test. Don't overhaul everything, just try one thing at a time. Keep it sustainable, keep it measurable, and then track that result from your test simply. Pick a metric that you care about, that you want it to improve, and ask yourself, did the test improve that metric? And that is a simple way to understand your data, your analytics, track your patterns, and improve your social media. So that's it. I know that that was a bit of a fire hydrant to your mouth, but hopefully that is a tool and a resource that I can provide you with to help you understand your data, to help you understand the story that your data is telling. The Meta Business Suite can be this enormous, scary place. So hopefully you have a bit more understanding of what it all means. And if you have any questions, again, we'll chat, but don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'd love to help you with this stuff. Thank you so much for journeying with us along the last 6 sessions. This is the last one for this series, but they'll all be available on YouTube. So I look forward to continuing to help you in your social media and Canva journeys.